All right, welcome everyone. Today we are going to dig into the incredible evolution of the U.S. Army's highest-ranking officer. We're talking about a journey from a general leading the charge on horseback to a modern strategist navigating the halls of the Pentagon. So let's jump right in. So let's start with a question that, might sound a little weird at first, but it gets right to the heart of American civil-military relations today. And that question is, why isn't the Army's top general actually in command of the Army? It seems like a paradox, right? But the answer reveals over a century of deliberate, careful changes in how our country manages its military power.
To really unpack this paradox, we've got to look back. The job of the Army's top general today is a completely different world from the one inhabited by those powerful field commanders who used to lead from the front. For a long, long time, the most senior officer was the commanding general of the Army. Think about legends like Ulysses S. Grant back in 1864 or William T. Sherman who came after him. Their authority? It was forged on the battlefield, leading armies in the thick of it. But that all came to a screeching halt in 1903. That was the year that would completely redefine Army leadership forever. And you can really see the night and day difference right here. The old commanding general was all about field command, a direct operational boss, often right there with his troops. But the modern chief of staff? Totally different beast. The focus is now administration, planning, and their office is in the Pentagon. It was a very intentional shift away from that single all-powerful field commander to something more like a CEO.
So let's really focus on that date, 1903. This was the year it all changed. So why? Well, the Spanish-American War had shown some serious cracks in the system, especially with planning and coordination. So Congress took a look at how modern European militaries were structured, and they passed a law that got rid of the commanding general role and created this brand new position, the Chief of Staff of the Army. And this is what that new role was built to do. The Chief of Staff is a statutory position. That means it's literally created by law. The job has two main parts. First, be the top military advisor to the civilian secretary of the Army, and second, act as the Army's administrative head. The whole idea was to centralize all that planning and management in Washington. Okay, so if the chief isn't out there commanding forces in a war zone, what do they actually do? Let's break down the modern chief's job, which is really about being a supervisor, not a commander.
This is the absolute key point to remember. The Chief of Staff of the Army is an administrative position. They do not have operational command authority. That power now flows straight from the President and the Secretary of Defense down to what we call the combatant commanders. Those are the 4-stars in charge of military ops all over the world. The Chief's role is something else entirely.
So instead of giving battle orders, the chief's main job is to man, train, and equip. They oversee Army organizations, they handle policies and budgets, and they're the ones responsible for making sure the combatant commanders get trained and ready forces. They also run the Army staff and go to bat for the Army's needs when all the services get together.
This chart really lays it out perfectly. See that operational chain of command? It goes straight from the National Command Authority, that's the President and SecDef, down to the operational commands. The Chief of Staff and the other service chiefs, they're on a separate track, responsible for providing the forces, not commanding them in a fight.
But running the Army as a big organization is only half the job. The chief also plays a hugely important advisory role at the very highest levels of our government. So let's talk about this dual role. Really, you can just think of it like this. The Chief of Staff wears two hats. With one hat on, they're the top uniformed officer for the Department of the Army, and they answer to the Secretary of the Army. With the other hat on, they're a key member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, giving advice that goes all the way up to the President. And in that second role, as one of the Joint Chiefs, the Chief of Staff provides military advice directly to the National Security Council, to the Secretary of Defense, and to the President. This is their seat at the big table where they offer that crucial Army-specific viewpoint on national security strategy. Now, getting this job isn't just about being a great general. The path to the top is a perfect example of civilian control in action. The President picks and nominates a candidate, but that officer can't take the job until they are confirmed by a majority vote in the U.S. Senate. And once they're confirmed, it's not a job for life. By law, the chief serves one single 4-year term. The only way they can be reappointed is if the country is in a time of war or a national emergency that's been declared by Congress. So this entire structure, it leads us to the most complex and, honestly, the most vital part of the chief's role, managing that relationship with civilian leadership.
And believe me, it's not always a smooth ride. In fact, there's a necessary, healthy tension built right into the system. This model here shows you what's going on. It's not a simple top-down line of authority. It's more like a triangle of relationships between civilian leaders, military leaders, and the American public that they both serve. And each corner of that triangle has different responsibilities and, frankly, different ways of seeing the world. And the bedrock of this whole system is the principle of civilian control. What's that mean? Well, at its core, it's about making sure that the military, the institution with the weapons and the power, always answers to the nation's elected leaders. It's how a democracy makes sure the military serves the people, not the other way around. But in the real world, this can cause some serious friction. The scholar Peter Favor laid out some of these different points of view. From the civilian side, there might be a worry that the military is slow-rolling options they don't like. From the military side, it can feel like civilians are micromanaging them without really understanding what's going on. These competing views create that constant tension the chief has to navigate.
And to make things even more complicated, you have our separation of powers. The president, as commander-in-chief, is in charge of strategy and military action. But it's Congress that controls the purse strings, the money, the manpower, and the laws that literally shape how the army is built. This means the military has to answer to two different branches of civilian government. It's a heck of a balancing act for the chief.
This all leads to a critical professional ethic for any senior officer, especially the chief. Their duty is to give their best, most honest military advice, even if it's not what the civilian leaders want to hear. Disagreement is part of a healthy process, but once a legal order is given by their civilian bosses, their duty is to execute it. Disagreement is not dissent, and it is absolutely not disobedience. So we end up right back where we started, with this complex, delicate balance. From the battlefield command of General Grant to the administrative and advisory role of today, the job of the Army's top general has been completely transformed. The challenge for every future leader, for all of you, is to understand this history, to learn how to navigate these tensions, and to figure out the answer to this final question. In our incredibly complex world, how must this balance of military advice and civilian obedience continue to evolve?